questions I'm asking you can just get us a yes or no answer. That's great, but I do want you to give us a full answer. But Mr. Smith from Washington mentioned that there was no new facts brought out in some of these interviews, and I wanted to say that I think he was at one interview for 1 hour. I have been at a bunch of those, and there is a lot of new facts that's come out. One of the things that he said, it doesn't, that you knew about these two incidents that have been mentioned previously. It's not a matter if you knew about them. It's a matter of what you did about them. And to us, the answer to that is nothing. Now, you say you were briefed by the CIA every morning that you were in Washington. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Did they ever mention to you, Assistant Acting Director Morrell wrote in his book that there were scores of intelligence pieces describing in detail how the situation in Libya was becoming more and more dangerous. Did you ever read any of these pieces?
Yes, as I've previously stated, we were certainly aware that the situation across Libya was becoming more dangerous and that there were particular concerns about eastern Libya.
Did you read the piece that was Libya, Al-Qaeda establishing sanctuary?
I'm aware that that was certainly among the information provided to me.
There was another particular piece that was talked about after the IED attack that AFRICOM wrote. Al-Qaeda expands in Libya. Were you familiar with that?
I can't speak to specific pieces, Congressman, but I was well aware of the concerns we all had about the setting up of jihad camps and other activities in Libya, particularly in eastern Libya.
You were briefed in, I think, the CIA between January and September of 2012 had over 4,500 pages of intelligence. Were you aware of how many pages of intelligence? And I know you had a specific division, I guess, of the State Department under you that was called Intelligence and Research. Did they keep you up to speed on all these 400 cables or different things that they were getting? Did they keep you up to speed on that you were aware of them?
Congressman, I can't speak to specific reports, but I can certainly agree with you that I was briefed and aware of the increasingly dangerous upsurge in militant activity in Libya.
And so what did you do to make sure that our men and women over there were protected, knowing how much the threat had grown, especially in Benghazi? Because a lot of people say that really in the summer of 2012, the security in Benghazi was worse than it was during the revolution.
Well, Congressman, with respect to not only the specific incidents that you referenced earlier, but the overall concerns about Benghazi, I think I have stated previously, there was never any recommendation by anyone, the intelligence community, the Defense Department, the State Department officials responsible for Libya, to leave Benghazi, even after the two incidents that you mentioned, because in part, as I responded to Smith, we had so many attacks on facilities that, as I said, went back to 2001, that certainly also happened in other parts of the world while I was there. Each was evaluated, and there was not a recommendation. Furthermore, there was not even on the morning of September 11th, while Chris Stevens and Sean Smith were at the compound, Chris had spoken with intelligence experts. There was no credible, actionable threat known to our intelligence community against our compound.
Reclaiming my time, you said that the Ambassador Kritz was pulled out of Tripoli because of threats on his life.
There were threats from people associated with Gaddafi after the publication of cables he had written that were made public by WikiLeaks.
And you say you were aware of the 2 attacks at the mission facility in Benghazi.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Morrell, in his book, states that there was 20 attacks on that facility. Are you familiar with the other 18?
There were 2 that we thought rose to the level of being serious.
Were you familiar with the other 18?
I'm not aware of 18 others. And I would point out, and I'm sure that former Deputy Director Morrell made this point when he was testifying, the CIA stayed in Libya. The CIA had a much bigger presence than the State Department, despite the overall decline in stability. Some might argue, actually, because of the overall decline in stability, it was thought to be even more important for the CIA to stay there, and they also did not believe that would be the subject of a deadly attack either, because I think sometimes, sometimes the discussion gets pulled together when really we had Chris and Sean dying at the State Department compound, which we are discussing, and we had our other 2 deaths of Tyrone Woods and Glenn Doherty at the CIA annex.
Reclaiming my time for just a minute, and I do appreciate that. But if you talk to the CIA contractors that were at the annex and you ask them how they were armed and equipped, and then if you would or could talk to the diplomatic security agents that were at the facility, I think you will see that there was a big, big difference in the equipment that they had to protect themselves. But you knew of the 2, what you call major incidents, but you don't recollect the other 18 that Mr. Morrell says happened. How many instances would it have taken you to say, hey, we need to look at the security over there? Would it have been 3 major instances, 30 instances, 40 instances, 50 instances? How many instances would you have been made aware of that would have made you say, hey, I don't care what anybody else says, we're going to protect our people. Chris Stevens is a good friend of mine. We're going to look after him. How many would it have taken?
Well, Congressman, of course, I made it abundantly clear that we had to do everything we could to protect our people. What I did not and do not believe any secretary should do was to substitute my judgment from thousands of miles away for the judgment of the security professionals who made the decisions about what kind of security would be provided. And I know that that sounds somewhat hard to understand, but, we have a process, and the experts who I have the greatest confidence in and who had been through so many difficult positions, because practically all of them had rotated through Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Yemen, other places. They were the ones making the assessment. No one ever came to me and said, we should shut down our compound in Benghazi.
I'm not saying shut it down. I'm saying protect it.
Well,
I'm not saying shut it down. I'm just saying protect it. And when you say security professionals, I'm not trying to be disparaging with anybody, but I don't know who those folks were, but
well, they were people who risked their lives to try to save.
Very professional when it came to protecting people. But let me say this: you said that the mission that you gave Ambassador Stevens was to go in to investigate the situation. Now, if you're going to investigate a situation, it would seem to me like you would have to get out into the country to investigate that. And I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but there were not even enough diplomatic security for him to leave the compound without asking the CIA operatives to assist them. Were you aware of that?
Well, we had an agreement with the CIA to help supplement security and to come to the aid. It was a mutual agreement.
Was that a written agreement?
No, it was not a written agreement. But we are posted with the CIA in many places in the country.
Okay.
I mean, in the world. And it's important to have a good working relationship, and we did.